Hello everyone, the release of Genshin's 7th region, Nod-Krai, is finally here and Lauma will be one of the new 5-star characters releasing in version Luna 1. Although Dendro teams have largely fallen out of favor in the meta since their peak in Sumeru, Lauma is looking like an incredible Dendro support that breathes some much needed life into the element as a whole, even rivaling the Dendro Archon herself in terms of power level while also introducing the game's second lunar reaction. To understand just how strong Lauma looks and how she fares in Nod-Krai's future, in this comprehensive guide I will be explaining how Lauma works, the best ways to build her, her potential best teams, and analyzing her place in the meta in terms of overall strength and pull value. Pretty much everything you need to know with simple and practical explanations while also giving more detailed analysis that is backed by TC, including plenty of pre-release calcs on Lauma. Before delving into the character kit, it is important to first understand the major Nod-Krai team building mechanic called Moonsign. Your party will have a different Moonsign depending on the number of Nod-Krai characters you have on the team. One Nod-Krai character means the party has a nascent Gleam Moonsign, and at least 2 Nod-Krai characters means the party has an Ascendant Gleam Moonsign. The party's level of Moonsign determines and enables certain buffs for many Nod-Krai related things, including artifact sets, weapons, character talent abilities, and counters to enemy mechanics. For example, the 4-piece of the Nod-Krai DPS artifact set, Night of the Sky's Unveiling, gives crit rate depending on the party's Moonsign. With a nascent Moonsign, aka one Nod-Krai character in the party, the 4-piece gives 15% crit rate. With an Ascendant Moonsign, aka at least 2 Nod-Krai characters in the party, the 4-piece gives 30% crit rate. In many cases, the full benefits unlock when the party has an Ascendant Gleam Moonsign, thus incentivizing Nod-Krai related teams to have at least 2 Nod-Krai characters. To give further incentive for having Ascendant Gleam, parties with Ascendant Gleam also have a special Nod-Krai resonance on top of the normal elemental resonance. With at least 2 Nod-Krai characters in the party, when your non-Nod-Krai characters use their elemental skills or bursts, they will grant a team-wide buff to lunar reaction damage up to a max of 36%, and this buff scales off a stat depending on that character's element. For Pyro, Electro, and Cryo, it's based on attack. For Hydro, it's based on HP. For Geo, it's based on defense. And for Anemo and Dendro, it's based on elemental mastery. So for example, in the teams with Flynn's, Anefa, Yelan, and Sucrose, Yelan and Sucrose are the non-Nod-Krai characters. When they use their skills or bursts, they will grant the team a lunar reaction damage buff based on the stat of their element. If Yelan has 30,000 HP, she gives 18% lunar reaction damage bonus. If Sucrose has 1000 EM, she gives 22.5%. If you add them together, you get over the max buff of 36%, so you get 36% lunar reaction damage bonus. Now, if you have Aino on the team instead of Yelan, only Sucrose is able to enable this new buff, so you just get 22.5% lunar reaction damage bonus. Here are the total stats needed from the corresponding elements to reach the max team lunar reaction damage bonus. Unless you have a character like Nilou on the team who can reach 60,000 HP herself, in many scenarios you need 2 non-Nod-Krai characters in the party to get the max buff. But getting the max buff from this new Nod-Krai resonance isn't something you absolutely need. It's just a nice damage buff specifically for teams that deal lunar reaction damage and gives an incentive to play the Nod-Krai characters together with characters from other regions. Now, let's delve into Lauma's actual kit. She is a 5-star Dendro Catalyst user who ascends with Elemental Mastery on top of having an additional base 200 EM, giving her a total of 315 base EM at level 90. She is a Bloom related support that buffs any Bloom related reactions, as with her special passive, when Lauma is in the party, she turns any Bloom reactions triggered into Lunar-Bloom, the second lunar reaction of the game. She also buffs his base damage by 14% as long as she has 800 EM and counts as a Nod-Krai character for Moonsign. So the big question is, how does Lunar-Bloom work? Normally, when you apply Hydro and Dendro on an enemy, you trigger Bloom and spawn a Bloom core where Dendro is the strong aura of the reaction. The core will explode after 6 seconds, but you can apply Electro on the core to trigger Hyper Bloom, apply Pyro on the core to trigger Virgin, or if you have Nilou on the team to make the Bloom cores bountiful cores, any Dendro cores made will immediately explode. When Lauma is on the team and you apply Hydro and Dendro on an enemy, you trigger Lunar-Bloom. But nothing really drastically changes with the reaction compared to normal Bloom. You still get a Bloom core, the core still reacts with Electro, Pyro, and Nilou the same way, and the damage of Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Virgin is the exact same as it is normally, and this fact is very important to realize. Even though you trigger Lunar Blooms when creating Dendro cores with Lauma on the team, there is no new Lunar Bloom damage coming from these reactions. The only source of Lunar Bloom damage on Nod-Krai's initial release will be from Lauma's hold skill attack and her C6, so any buffs that increase Lunar Bloom damage will only increase these 2 damage sources, not any of the Bloom related reactions. Thus, even with Lauma Lauma on the team, Bloom cores exploding on their own or with Nilou is still regular Bloom damage, proccing Hyper Bloom still results in regular Hyper Bloom damage, and proccing Burgeon is still regular Burgeon damage. So how does Lunar Bloom differ from normal Bloom? The only thing that's different is that when you trigger Lunar Bloom to create a Dendro core, after 2.5 seconds you obtain one Verdant Dew. Only one Verdant Dew can be produced at a single time, but if you trigger Lunar Bloom while one is in production, the next Verdant Dew will immediately start being produced. So in order to gain 3 Verdant Dews while triggering Lunar Blooms, you'll need to wait at least 7.5 seconds, and Verdant Dews are important in utilizing Lauma's kit. One of Lauma's main supportive capabilities comes from her A1 passive. After using her skill, Lauma busts the team for 20 seconds depending on the Moonsign of the team. When Lauma is the only Nod-Krai character on the team, she allows all Bloom related reactions to crit when normally they can't. So Normal Bloom, Nilou Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Burgeon will have 15% crit rate and 100% crit damage. This is pretty much Nahida C2, and Lauma's passive does stack the crit weight with Nahida C2 if both are on the team. Now if you have at least one other Nod-Krai character on the team with Lauma, instead of allowing Bloom related reactions to crit, the team gets 10% crit rate and 20% crit damage to Lunar Bloom damage. On Nod-Krai's initial release, this crit buff only affects Lauma's hold skill and C6, but this will become much more relevant when a Lunar Bloom DPS releases in the near future. Because of this passive, depending on the team, Lauma doesn't always want the party to have Ascendant Gleam like other Nod-Krai characters. Although there is a trade-off of not getting the full benefits of some Nod-Krai weapons and artifacts without Ascendant Gleam, the crit to all Bloom related reactions from Lauma being the only Nod-Krai character on the party can be better for the team, thus allowing you to choose Lauma's buff with your party composition. Lauma also supports the team through her elemental skill, which has a tap and hold version. In both cases, Lauma's skill does damage and summons a field called a Frostgrove Sanctuary that follows the active character for 15 seconds and deals dendro damage to all enemies in the field every 2 seconds. Every other hit from this field generates a dendro particle with a 1/3 chance of generating an additional particle. The attacks from her skill reduce the enemy's dendro and hydro res for 10 seconds, and the skill's damage gets increased based on Lauma's EM with her A4 passive. The difference between the tap and hold skill is the initial cast of damage. Tap skill is simply one initial hit and it doesn't do much damage. Her hold skill on the other hand can only be used when you have Verdant Dews from triggering Lunar Bloom. Using hold skill consumes all Verdant Dews you have up to a max of 3 and deals 2 initial hits. The second hit will deal damage based on how many Dews were consumed and is considered Lunar Bloom damage. As a result, on top of its normal EM and crit scaling, this damage also ignores enemy defense, providing Lauma a decent source of personal damage. Lastly, all Verdant Dews that were consumed are converted into stacks of Moonsign, which are used in her elemental burst. Lauma's burst doesn't deal any damage, but grants 18 stacks of Pale Hymn for 15 seconds. In addition, each Moonsong stack she already has or gains from her hold skill while her burst is active will be converted into 6 additional Pale Hymn stacks. This means hold skill into burst or burst into hold skill will do the same thing. Since her hold skill consumes up to 3 Verdant Dews, you can get up to a total of 36 Pale Hymn stacks with the burst. Each Pale Hymn stack increases the damage of any Bloom related reaction, including Lunar Bloom damage, scaling off of Lauma's EM. These act like Shen quills, so they are flat damage bonuses added to the damage of the reaction, then it gets multiplied by the crit and res multiplier. Lastly, Lauma can turn into a deer with her charged attack, allowing her to perform consecutive jumps in the air. This exploration ability has a 4-second cooldown but can be reduced with her A4 passive based on her EM. And her exploration passive displays Nod-Krai resources on your map and allows Lauma to have some special affinity with Nod-Krai animals. That's everything you need to know about Lauma's base kit. In terms of talent leveling priority, you want to level both her skill and burst, giving a slight priority to her skill because it increases her dendro and hydro res shred. In terms of her general gameplay, in most teams, Lauma is a support that uses normal attack, burst, hold skill, then swaps out. The normal attack triggers Lunar Bloom if hydro is already applied on an enemy, which creates a Verdant Dew, so you can actually use Lauma's hold skill at the start of a rotation. Of course, not all teams will have Lauma play like this. She may use her tap skill or be an on-fielder instead, using her normal attacks. More exact rotations will be outlined in the team section. Now let's go over her constellations. After using her skill or burst, C1 allows Lauma to heal the active character every 1.9 seconds when Lunar Bloom is triggered. This healing scales off of Lauma's EM and is pretty potent. It also enhances her deer exploration form. C2 enhances the Pale Hymn quills of her burst, increasing the damage of all Bloom related reactions and Lunar Bloom damage even further. And if there are at least 2 Nod-Krai characters on the team gets extra damage bonus for Lunar Bloom damage. C3 increases her burst talent level by 3, C4 gives Lauma Lauma extra energy when her off-field Dendro attacks hit enemies, C5 increases her skill town level by 3, and lastly C6 allows Lauma's off-field Dendro attacks to deal 8 additional damage instances that give additional Pale Hymn stacks, and that is considered Lunar-Bloom damage, greatly increasing her personal damage. In addition, Lauma can normal attack with Pale Hymn stacks to convert one stack into an instance of Lunar-Bloom damage, allowing her to play like an on-field carry. On top of that, C6 elevates the damage of Lunar-Bloom for the party, assuming you have at least 2 Nod-Krai characters on the team. Elevation is a new specific keyword which indicates that the buff is a direct multiplier increase and not just added damage bonus, meaning it is much stronger of a buff. Overall, her C2 is looking like her best constellation in terms of damage gain, and it will only get better when the Lunar-Bloom damage buff becomes more relevant with a Lunar-Bloom DPS. Her other constellations aren't nearly as good. C6 is mainly for the on-field novelty, C4 energy can be nice but you can get ER elsewhere, and while C1 enables Lauma to heal, that's all it does. It can uniquely allow Lauma to act as a healer slot in Nilou-Bloom teams, which can either help the team's survivability or allow you to replace another healer slot with another support, such as replacing Baiju for Nahida. But even with a character replacement like this, the damage gain currently looks minimal. Next, here are the best builds for Lauma. For weapons, her signature Nightweaver's Looking Glass is her best in slot. As long as Lauma uses her skill and the party triggers Lunar-Bloom, the weapon gives Lauma a total of 325 EM and gives the party 120% damage bonus to Bloom, 80% damage bonus to Hyperbloom Inversion, and 40% damage bonus to Lunar-Bloom. It's a very good weapon, being able to give about a 20% team damage increase to Nilou-Bloom teams and about an 8% increase to Hyperbloom teams. And this signature will only get better when a Lunar-Bloom DPS takes advantage of the Lunar-Bloom damage buff. If you happen to have the 3 other 5-star signature weapons that have an EM substat, they are also usable. For 4-star weapons, Aetherlight Spindle Loot, which will be a free event weapon in Nod-Krai's first patch, is her general best 4-star option. The ER substat is very helpful and it gives her 200 EM after using her skill. Another good free-to-play option is the new craftable catalyst Black Marrow Lantern. On top of the EM substat, it increases Bloom and Lunar-Bloom damage, and if there are at least 2 Nod-Krai characters on the team, this buff gets further increased. Although in many Lauma teams you won't get the additional damage buff, this weapon is still good, but the main downside is that it doesn't give any energy recharge. The Sumeru craftable Fruit of Fulfillment is also another good free-to-play option that gives both ER and EM. For teams that may need additional energy, Favonius Codex is a good supportive weapon option, and if you want to optimize Lauma's personal damage, Sacrificial Jade is a solid weapon choice, specifically in teams that focus more on Quicken rather than Bloom, so Lauma can trigger spread on her attacks. For artifact sets, she has 2 main options. When she's the only Dendro support on the team and the team does Dendro damage, such as in Dendro reaction oriented teams like Hyperbloom, she'll use 4-piece Deepwood for the Dendro res shred. Otherwise, Lauma can use the new Nod-Krai support set, Silken Moon Serenade. The 2-piece gives 20% ER and the 4-piece increases the team's elemental mastery after dealing elemental damage based on the number of Nod-Krai characters on the team. With 1 Nod-Krai character, the 4-piece gives the team 60 EM. With at least 2 Nod-Krai characters, the set gives the team 120 EM. On top of that, the set increases the team's lunar reaction damage by 10% for each unique Nod-Krai artifact users on the team. So if Lauma holds this set and a DPS on the team holds the Nod-Krai DPS set, the team gets 20% lunar reaction damage bonus. Since many teams prefer Lauma to be the only Nod-Krai character on the team to allow Bloom related reactions to crit, in many teams Lauma won't be able to use Silken Moon Serenade to its full effect. Despite this set is still good and it will likely be her go-to set when a Lunar-Bloom DPS releases that synergizes with her. In terms of more niche sets, Lauma can use the Nod-Krai DPS set Night of the Skies Unveiling when the team has Ascendant Gleam to get 30% crit rate from the 4-piece. Though the support set is generally better, this set does improve Lauma's Lunar-Bloom damage from her hold skill and can be used in a Nilo team with Lauma and Aino for instance. 4-piece Gilded Dreams is also decent just for the EM. For main stats, her standard build is just full EM. If your weapon doesn't give energy like her signature, you can use an ER Hourglass instead. For substats, prioritize ER and EM, then crit if you want, such as crit rate for Favonius Codex. Her energy requirements can vary depending on the team. It can be around 150 ER in double Dendro teams to upwards to 200 ER in solo Dendro teams. Finally, let's go over Lauma's best team comps. For this section, I will be showing team DPS calcs from Theorycrafters, vomfee, and hyperwebster. Keep in mind to not directly compare the results with other TCers, as assumptions can differ between people. And for Dendro reactions especially, calcs can differ greatly based on the assumptions used, so consume TC responsibly. As a Dendro support that mainly focuses on buffing all things Bloom related, the first obvious team archetype she fits very well in is Nilou-Bloom. With Lauma plus Nilou, you generally want one other Dendro unit and one other Hydro unit, with one of them being your healer. For instance, you can use a Hydro healer like Kokomi or Barbara, so you can use Nahida as the second Dendro, making one of Nilou's newest best Bloom teams. Kaveh can also work in the Dendro slot with Xingqiu as the second Hydro, assuming Kaveh can self-sustain the Bloom damage well. The other team building choice is to use a Dendro healer like Baizhu or Yao Yao, or even Kirara because she has a Dendro shield, allowing you to slot in a more offensive Hydro unit. One of these Hydro units is actually using Ino. Even though Ino's presence means your Blooms can't crit anymore because the party has Ascendant Gleam, you do get the full benefits of both Nod-Krai artifact sets and additional crit for Lauma's hold skill, which slightly makes up for it. Other than buffing Nilou-Bloom, Lauma also improves Hyperbloom oriented teams. For example, instead of on-fielding Nahida in the standard double Hydro Hyperbloom team, you can use Lauma instead, who makes the team better with her innate res shred and allowing the Hyperblooms to crit. If you were using a Hydro or Electro on-fielder in this kind of Hyperbloom team, the same thing applies. Lauma also works in Hyperbloom teams with a Dendro main DPS like Alhaitham and Tainari, allowing them to use the new Nod-Krai DPS set. Even if it's just 15% crit rate from the 4-piece, it's still a good set to use. Lauma also pairs well with Anefa in Hyperbloom teams that allow enough lunar charge uptime so Anefa can deal damage despite deactivating Lauma's Bloom reaction crit passive. For instance, you can play Lauma with Flynn's, Anefa, and Yelan. This team does have enough lunar charge uptime for the presence of thunderclouds, which is important for both Flynn's and Anefa's kits. However, Yelan is not enough Hydro for constant lunar charged reactions, resulting in lower potential damage. On top of that, the endgame content in the first Nod-Krai patch incentivizes playing Flynn's and Lauma on separate teams, but if you do want to play them together, the team still works fine. A better team example illustrating the Lauma and Anefa combo is with Nivulette. With double Hydro, you'll get some Hyperblooms and plenty of lunar charge uptime for Anefa, making yet another strong Nivulette team. Another team example is with Sino. With specifically Xingqiu as the off-field Hydro, there's enough lunar charge uptime for Anefa to deal damage, on top of Sino being able to proc Hyperblooms and allowing him to use the new Nod-Krai DPS set. Even though Lauma is a Bloom-oriented support, you can still play her as a support for spread teams such as with Alhaitham just for the Dendro res from her skill. You can also play Lauma in a Molani Burn Vape team since her skill also reduces Hydro res to buff Molani's damage. Lastly, for Burgeon teams, Lauma should be better than Nahida in teams that rely mainly on Burgeon reaction damage like Toma Double Hydro. However, Burgeon is still a pretty bad team archetype meta-wise, so I still don't really recommend playing them. In terms of the addition of level 100, Lauma teams do look to gain relatively more than other teams because Dendro teams play around transformative reactions. However, Lauma is generally not the character that's leveling past 90. The main DPS or the character who triggers most of the reactions will be. Vomfee did do some early calcs incorporating a level 100 unit in Lauma teams. There is still some info about level 100 that isn't confirmed, but assuming transformative reaction damage scales the same way and there are no increase in talent levels, most Lauma teams get around a 10% team DPS increase, and specifically Lauma Double Hydro Hyperbloom gets about a 20% buff, but of course this is all subject to change. To conclude this Lauma guide, I wanted to share my analysis on her place in the meta in terms of overall strength and pull value. Ever since the end of Sumeru, Dendro teams have continually become less meta relevant because newer and stronger characters released in Fontaine and Knotline strengthened other team archetypes, leaving Dendro by the wayside other than specifically burning with Kenichi and Emily. Fortunately, Lauma is looking to buff many Dendro teams, mainly Bloom related teams like Nilou-Bloom and Hyperbloom. She gives these teams a much needed breath of life in Nod-Krai, allowing them to be much more competitive with the other meta team archetypes, especially since there will be endgame content favoring Bloom reactions. As a strong off-field Dendro support, she fulfills the role that Nahida has typically taken, and in many ways, Lauma is just a better Dendro support than Nahida. Nahida's biggest strength as an off-field Dendro support was her good off-field Dendro application for Bloom-related reactions, as well as an elemental mastery buff on her burst if the team was actually able to take advantage of it. But Lauma's off-field Dendro application is also good for enabling Bloom-related reactions, while also being better in multi-wave and not requiring an elemental reaction to propagate her Dendro app. Plus, Lauma has potential personal damage with her hold skill doing Lunar-Bloom damage, shreds Hydro and Dendro res with her skill, and buffs all Bloom related reactions with her burst and allowing them to crit if she's the only Nod-Krai character in the party. In many of the Bloom oriented Dendro teams, using Lauma instead of Nahida just makes the team better, and arguably a C0 Lauma is still better than a C2 Nahida. Thus, Lauma can be considered Nahida Powercreep. However, Lauma doesn't completely replace Nahida, as in some teams like Nilou-Bloom and Alhaitham Spread, you can use both Lauma and Nahida together for a strong Dendro support duo. Lauma on release is in a very similar scenario as Anefa on release. Both are strong off-fielders that enable a lunar reaction that can benefit a good amount of teams, making them versatile supports. But on their initial release, no character really took full advantage of their supportive kits. Anefa on release was a great Electro off-fielder, but no character in patch 5.8 really benefited from her lunar charge buffs and EM buff from her burst. But with Flinz's release as a lunar charge DPS, Anefa now has a main DPS that works very well with her, increasing her value and strength. Lauma on release will be a great support for Bloom related teams, especially when she's the only Nod-Krai character to give them the ability to crit. But no one currently benefits from any of Lauma's Lunar-Bloom damage buffs other than herself. And her Lunar-Bloom buffs are strong, including a 14% base damage increase with her special passive, 40 CV with her A1 when at least 2 Nod-Krai characters on the team, Dendro Res Shred, and the extra damage from her burst. Everything points toward a future Lunar-Bloom DPS which would give Lauma more strength and value as a support. With Nefer being Dendro and rumored to be releasing the patch after, she is likely the DPS that will benefit a lot from Lauma, just like with Flinz and Anefa. And with Columbina being rumored to be the premier Hydra support for lunar teams, she likely fits into the team as well. Thus, Lauma's actual best team is likely still yet to come. So if you're looking to improve some of your existing Dendro teams, or if you're interested in Nefer, you may want to consider adding Lauma to your account. And that's everything I wanted to cover about Lauma. Big thanks to the wonderful theory crafters, vomfee and hyperwebster for all the calcs shown in this video. I hope this guide and analysis was helpful to you all in giving you a better understanding of everything related to Lauma. Just clicking and watching the video helps the channel out immensely, and if you want to show even more support, consider liking or sharing the video, or click the subscribe button for more Genshin guide and analysis videos in the future. Leave any questions in the comments, and for all of you planning on wishing, I wish you all the best of luck on your Lauma pools.